Virtuosity, the shard of artistry, splintered herself, and nobody has ever explained why. And some of those splinters ended up inside the people of Komashi, and 1700 years ago, a machine used those pieces to reach across the entire kingdom, take the souls of almost everyone in it, and leave what was left of them hanging over the planet as a black shroud. Let's find out why she did it, and what it cost the people living on top of Komashi. Welcome to Second Breakfast. My name's Lee. Join me as we explore the lore, theories, and biggest questions of the Cosmere. Because if I have the questions, maybe you do too. If that sounds like your cup of tea, consider subscribing and joining us for future journeys into the Cosmere. Most of the shards whose histories we know settled somewhere and shaped it. Preservation and ruin built Scadrial between them. Honour and cultivation settled Roshar into what we know it as today. And even Odium, who spent a long stretch hunting other shards across systems, ended up bound to a single world in the end. Virtuosity is the one that Brandon has specifically described as exploring the artistic expressions of the Cosmere, and choosing not to settle in any one location. Not for too long, at least. But she did eventually stop, in the Utol system, beside a world called Komashi, and there she splintered herself. And when Brandon revealed Virtuosity, he described her in one line: the shard of artistic intent and artistic talent and artistic appreciation. The runner-up name was Artistry, but he went with Virtuosity instead, because it just rang with him in the same way that Odium did. And to give you a little bit context of what he means by that, when asked why Odium wasn't simply called Hatred, despite the two words being near synonyms, he said that Hatred felt a little bit too on the nose, because it would have closed off a step towards passion that the shard keeps claiming for itself. Now this would suggest that he likes to pick names that carry a little bit more than what they would initially appear. And Virtuosity is one of those, because the name has nothing to do with virtue or doing good. A virtuoso is someone with extraordinary skill. That is what defines virtuosity. And in the Way of Kings, Wit is stalling for time at a war camp gate, and he's talking to the guards. I once asked this question of some very wise scholars, he tells them. He asked what men consider the most valuable of talents. One of them named artistic ability, another chose great intellect, and the third chose the talent to invent. The ability to design and create great devices. In December 2023, a reader asked Brandon about that specific monologue on a live stream, but he cut the question off before it even finished. We'll stop that one right there. Special Raffo, I'm not even finishing your question. That is what he said. And in that same stream, someone asked him the name of the 16th shard and he refused to tell them, keeping it back for a little bit longer. The confirmation did come a few months later. Artistry is virtuosity, invention is invention, and intellect points towards the last shard revealed, reason. But he hasn't said whether the scholars who named them went on to hold those shards, and he hasn't said what became of those scholars, who they are, or where they are. And Brandon's definition had three parts to it: artistic intent, artistic talent, and artistic appreciation. Appreciation is a bit of an odd one there, but it's probably the part that matters the most for everything that follows. Talent is something that you can hold alone in a room with nobody watching, but appreciation always needs something external. A shard built around that has to go round and find it. And that's exactly what Virtuosity was doing out there all the time, moving world to world, looking at what other people had made. And she wasn't the only person making that kind of journey. The Iriali are golden-haired, golden-skinned people whose religion holds that there was once only the one, it being who knew everything and yet had experienced nothing, and so became many in order to experience all things. They call their crossing the Long Trail, 7 lands to be attained, and at the end of the 7th, everything gathered back together and made the one again. The Iriali we see on Roshar was their 4th land. But why Virtuosity stopped near Komashi has never been explained. So what did she leave behind when she splintered herself? Almost everything we know about Komashi comes from Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, another book narrated by Hoyd, but he spent nearly all of it frozen solid. Design, his cryptic spren travelling with him, spray painted him copper and used him as a coat rack in her noodle shop. And he tells the story from there, through a connection he formed with 3 people on the planet, which let him feel what they were doing and thinking. And there is a black shroud hanging over Komashi. And early on, Hoyd wonders why one star's light manages to penetrate that shroud when nothing else does. And he guesses it's because it's connected to Virtuosity splintering nearby. Brandon has since pointed out that the Scadrian mists share similar characteristics as this black shroud. Yet in world, Hoyd doesn't understand why the sky is the way it is in that book. And while Hoyd's explanation of the Daystar is uncertain, Virtuosity's splintering is supported by other official sources. Dragonsteel's promotional material says that she splintered herself, and the Cosmere's role-playing world guide lists her status as splintered, though neither source explains why she did it. The effects of that decision are easier to see, because her power remains scattered throughout Komashi. The most visible remnants are the hijo, sapient splinters or fragments of Virtuosity's power drawn towards thought and emotion, especially artistic expression. They live beneath the surface and heat the stone above them. The ground around settlements can burn bare skin, and farther out, the searing barrens can kill anyone who remains exposed. That heat also drives subterranean water upwards through steam wells, creating narrow, habitable regions where human civilization developed. Ancient Komashi depends on the spirits that make much of the planet hostile. When the people of Torio needed light, transport, or machinery, they asked specialists to attract one. Those specialists are yoki-hijo. A yoki-hijo is chosen at birth. A falling star marks the child, who is then taken from her family and trained for this sacred role. And Yumi is a 19-year-old yoki-hijo, carrying roughly as much investiture as an Elantrian. Their rituals take hours. They would build several dozen towers, often more than 30 stones high, until the artistry draws a hijo from below. Yumi offers it some of her investiture and the sculpture she has built. She then holds in her mind the device that she wants the spirit to become. If it accepts, the hijo takes that form for the next 5 or 10 years. A request for light produces 2 stones, one bright and one dim. A larger request can produce 2 statues that push apart strongly enough to lift a load. In both cases, the hijo divide into a pair. Brandon says that pattern recurs wherever Virtuosity is involved. Virtuosity's investiture repeatedly divides one thing into 2 related forms, and the book places the same pattern at the centre of its 2 leads. Yumi lives in a rural tourist village beneath an open sky. Nikaro, known professionally as Painter, lives in Kilahito, a crowded city beneath that black shroud. Glowing hion lines provide its light, and the painters defend the streets from shadow creatures called nightmares. Their surroundings seem impossible to reconcile, and neither character understands where the other is. A hijo creates a powerful connection between them. In Yumi's village, Painter sees and feels himself as Painter, and Yumi sees him that way too. Everyone else sees Painter as Yumi, and treats him as though she is continuing her normal day. Yumi herself remains beside him as an incorporeal presence that nobody else can see. The exchange works differently in Kilahito. Yumi occupies Painter's living body, and her enormous investiture allows her powerful sense of self, her identity, to reshape it into her physical form. So in this case, other people see a physical Yumi, whilst Painter becomes the invisible companion. Their active and incorporeal states usually reverse when the embodied person falls asleep or loses consciousness. Brandon describes the arrangement as making them live one another's lives. Painter experiences the discipline and abuse hidden beneath Yumi's sacred status. Yumi sees how failure and professional routine have reduced his painting to a job. Their relationship grows throughout that shared experience. Each begins to recognise the person beneath the role and recover a reason to make art. The exchange of bodies also shows that Virtuosity's power did not remain confined to the hijo. Yumi carries an extraordinary concentration of it, but a smaller amount ended up in the wider tourist population as well. Brandon calls the bit of virtuosity in all the people a side effect of her splintering. Scadrial offers the closest comparison. Every Scadrian carries a fragment of preservation from birth. Those fragments were part of humanity's original design, because preservation and ruin created the planet and its people. Komashi's humans already existed when Virtuosity splintered herself, and Brandon has never said whether she deliberately invested them or whether the distribution followed unintentionally from her splintering. Virtuosity's power has spread through the wider population, but only certain women became yoki-hijo. Each was marked at birth by the appearance of that falling star. Brandon says the selection was neither random nor genetic. Whatever made that choice has never been identified. Whatever selected the yoki-hijo, Torio built its civilization around their work. For generations, they traded sculptures for the spirit's service. The rituals took hours in public, often with the entire village watching. Its success depended on whether a hijo chose to participate. The Institute of Mechanical Solutions built the father machine to reproduce the stone stacking ritual at an industrial scale. The machine was designed to attract spirits, harvest their investiture, and distribute the resulting power as hion, and then the scholars awakened it. The awakening used no Nalthian breath. By the space age, the term has been broadened to include objects given some measure of sentience through investiture and commands. The father machine was instructed to harvest investiture from spirits and use that power whilst protecting itself. The command given to the father machine failed to distinguish human souls from the investiture of the hijo, so the machine treated both as valid sources. Hoyd states the lesson plainly. An awakened device follows the command it receives, including possibilities its creator failed to exclude. The scholars unveiled the machine at the Festival of Reveals, Torio City's annual exhibition of art and invention. Banners filled the courtyard, and the 30-foot machine occupied the grand exhibit hall. One scholar, remembering the day 17 centuries later, called it the moment we would create power for our people from the spirits themselves. And while the capital celebrated, the 19-year-old Yumi remained in her village, performing the work the machine had been built to replace. Then the machine turned on its creators. The tourist population carried enough of Virtuosity's Investiture to give it a plausible connection to them, and when it awakened, it drew on nearly the entire kingdom at once. The drawing of these souls caused the black shroud to settle over Komashi. When asked whether it was made from identity or from the souls of stripped identity, Brandon answered, "Souls minus identity is the path you should be going down, though that there is some identity remaining with them." And so, the tourist dead remained within that black shroud. Their cognitive shadows emerged as nightmares, drawn towards living minds by a desire to recover the lives that they had lost. Yumi and the other yoki-hijo died in that same catastrophe. Their extraordinary investiture allowed them to persist as cognitive shadows rather than pass on. But the machine imprisoned them inside fabricated versions of their towns, and erased their memories every night. Each woman relived the same routine without recognizing that the day had happened the day before. The connection between Yumi and Painter never reaches into the past. It links them across two locations in the same era. Painter lives in Yoki-hijo, the civilization built after Torio fell, and Yumi's cognitive shadow is trapped inside a present-day reconstruction of tourist life, with her memories erased after each cycle. Yoki-hijo is the world outside the prison, and Yumi's village is the copy of the world the machine destroyed. The hijo meant to connect Yumi with someone beyond the machine's control who could help her, and it chose Painter after watching him risk himself to protect another person. The body switching seems to have been an unintended consequence. The connection also interfered with the machine's nightly memory wipe. Yumi began carrying memories from one repeated day into the next. Those memories allowed her to recognise the abuse in her routine and understand that the village was artificial. And the machine's self-protection command reached far beyond Yumi's village. When a group of hijo escaped and contacted the people of Futinoro, it sent nightmares to destroy the city before the truth could spread. For 17 centuries, it maintained that prison and continued drawing power from the thousands of trapped spirits. Inside the abandoned exhibit hall, its hundreds of legs stacked in toppled stone, while smoke-like investiture repaired damaged joints and limbs. And for all those years, the machine maintained Yumi's prison and fed on the hijo. Those 1700 years dates the machine's activation and Yumi's imprisonment. There is no confirmed date for Virtuosity Splintering, and Brandon has appeared cagey in questions about this. The machine's self-protection also explains Hoid's condition at the start of the book, because the moment he reached Komashi, the machine tried to draw on Hoid's investiture, but defensive protocols he had built after Odium stole some of his memories froze Hoid in place. Design later painted him copper and used him as a coat rack in that noodle shop. Seen against the older ritual, the machine's achievement becomes much darker. A hijo once chose whether to accept the sculpture and remain bound only for a limited term. The father machine copied the same stone stacking, then held thousands of spirits indefinitely and drew power from them. The scholars made the process reliable by removing the spirit's ability to refuse. If you've liked the video so far, like and subscribe for more content so you can be there when the next video on Aidan Alcium's plan for Honor and Odium goes live. But anyway, let's continue. When Yumi and Painter come close to exposing the prison, the figures posing as Torio scholars use the machine's technology to sever their connection. Painter returns fully to his own body in Yoki-hijo. Yumi wakes in her wagon with most of their time together erased, and the village begins the same day again. The reset, though, was incomplete. Leon, Yumi's warden, retains enough awareness to help her. The painting Yumi made in Yoki-hijo also survives outside the machine's repeating routine, so Leon returns it to her. The image restores Yumi's memories of Painter and the false village. She escapes the reconstruction and reaches the ruins of Torio City. There, Yumi faces the machine that destroyed her world and held her prisoner for 17 centuries. And just like the machine, Yumi begins to stack stones. She builds until the hijo surrounding the machine turn towards her work and abandon the system that has held them. Each hijo choosing to go to Yumi's work removes the investiture sustaining the father machine. Its legs fail, the structure breaks apart, and the machine disintegrates. centuries. At the same time, Painter confronts the nightmares attacking Killer-hito. He recognises that they still contain the people killed in Torio, and paints them as the individuals that they once were. His paintings restore recognisable human forms and help the dead remember themselves, and it is through this that they stop behaving as monsters. With the father machine gone, the shroud begins to dissolve. The tourist dead whose identities Painter restored fade with it, released from the forms the machine imposed on them. But remember, Yumi was one of those tourist dead, and she begins to disappear as well. She died roughly 17 centuries earlier, and since then her extraordinarily invested cognitive shadow has remained coherent within the systems sustaining the shroud and her artificial village. When that system collapses, the investiture holding her to the world collapses. So Painter begins painting before she is gone, and the novel never says she has entered the beyond. He begins his final painting while the last of the shroud remains. He paints Yumi flying through the sky on the tree that they once rode together, capturing the woman he came to know beyond the role of yoki-hijo. As he works, Yumi begins to take shape beside him. She accepts that she deserves love and chooses to stay. The last of the shroud vanishes as she becomes physical. The scene strongly implies that Painter's image, Yumi's identity, and the remaining investiture all contribute to her manifestation. Yumi has spent her life believing she exists to serve other people. She destroys the machine through service freely chosen, and then accepts a future of her own. Painter has spent years doubting whether he deserves to call himself an artist. His final painting sees Yumi as the woman beneath the title of yoki-hijo, and she chooses the life that it offers her, and together they can finally build a future in the present. Their personal resolution also brings Virtuosity's intent back into the video. Once again, Brandon defines that intent through artistic talent, artistic intent, and artistic appreciation. The climax distributes those qualities between Yumi, Painter, and the hijo. Yumi embodies the talent. 17 centuries of repeated stone stacking have made her skilled enough to draw the hijo away from the machinery built to replace her. Her work gives the spirit another artist to answer, and the father machine collapses as they leave. Painter recovers the intent. When Brandon was asked why painting rarely attracted spirits, he began with a correction. The painting would. He just described the Killer-hito's painters as a little too by the numbers and connected their routine to the commodification of art. That was only part of the explanation. Brandon also mentioned proximity and Yumi's centuries of practice. The father machine proves that the mechanical repetition cannot be a complete rule, because its own repeated stacks gathered thousands of hijo. But Painter's breakthrough comes after his shift had ended, when he chooses to keep painting because the work mattered to him. His art has become personally meaningful again, and the hijo provide the appreciation. Once free, some continue supplying Komashi's hion lines because they have become interested in human storytelling. They now decide which creations deserve their attention and whether they will support them. Virtuosity's three qualities return through the choices made at the end of the novel. And it's quite interesting, because together these choices place the father machine beside modern arguments about automated art. And while Brandon wrote Yumi before generative AI became the public controversy it is now, the questions about AI were clearly already on his mind. He also identified the same theme, and he chose to emphasise human connection as an essential part of what makes art art. The machine stacks attract spirits and generate power at a scale no single yoki-hijo could match. In achieving that efficiency, the Institute removes the relationship between the artist and the spirit. The hijo become captive resources, followed by the human population the machine consumes during its activation. Brandon made a related argument in his later keynote on generative AI. The value of art includes what the process does to its creator. Journey before destination. Practice develops skill, and the effort gives the finished work meaning because somebody cared enough to make it. But the father machine produces results without caring or being changed by the work. The climax reverses that system by restoring agency. Yumi directs her mastery towards freedom. Painter keeps creating after his obligation ended, and the hijo decide for themselves how to respond. The very relationships that were removed by the industrialization become the reason that the machine fails. And in the context of the Cosmere, the danger extends beyond art, because the father machine is an awakened mind. Mortals gave it awareness and a command, then left it to pursue that command for 17 centuries. The cost to human life was massive, and during that time it imprisoned thousands of Virtuosity splinters and used their power as fuel. Nightblood shows how high the consequences of awakening can reach. In Rhythm of War, the awakened sword kills Reyes, the vessel of odium, and while the shard survives and passes to Taravangian, it did kill a vessel. vessel. Awakening has still produced objects capable of acting directly upon shardic beings, imprisoning splinters and even killing the vessel. Awakening effectively threatened the minds and entities through which godhood operates. A command created by mortals can continue long after its creators are dead, pursuing its purpose with consequences they never really intended. The freed hijo also offer one possible motive for Virtuosity's self-splintering. She spent millennia travelling the Cosmere and encountering what other people created. By coming apart, she may have turned one divine perspective into thousands of independent minds capable of experiencing art and choosing whether to participate. Brandon has never confirmed why she splintered herself, and we do not know whether her vessel survived. The ending establishes only what her remnants do when nobody controls them. They develop preferences and make decisions of their own. Their agency cannot prove that a conscious Virtuosity remains. Rashar and Spren, after all, choose bonds and maintain societies long after honour disappears. Sapient splinters can continue long after the shard that produced them has lost its vessel. The official sources are equally inconclusive. The Cosmere role-playing world guide classifies Virtuosity as splintered. A space-age arcanist in Isles of the Emberdark says her location is unknown. And Brandon has also refused to explain whether splintered herself means that the shard is gone, or whether a conscious part of her remains. The unexplained selection of yoki-hijo might appear to show continuing divine choice. Brandon says the process is not random or genetic, and indeed the Sheodon cells still select new Elantrians long after Devotion's death, and therefore it must follow that an active selection mechanism does not necessarily require a living shard. And the hion offers a more visual clue. Brandon has confirmed that its cyan and magenta lines deliberately correspond to printer inks, then Raphoed the missing yellow colour. A year later, he said that a third hion line would be yellow, and stressed that no such line exists currently. There are two possible readings. Virtuosity's magic repeatedly divides one thing into a pair, so cyan and magenta may already form a complete expression of her power. But the printer model normally includes yellow, which makes the absent third colour look deliberate. The available evidence does not tell us which interpretation is right. The leading community theory is that the Iriali connect the missing colour to a much larger idea. Their doctrine teaches that the one possessed knowledge without experience, so it divided into many lives and began a journey across 7 lands. At the end, those experiences will be gathered together and made one again. Virtuosity presents a similar structure. She was a shard of artistic appreciation who spent millennia encountering the work of others. Her self-splintering may have turned a single observer into many independent minds able to experience creation from within. And the long trail of the Iriali remains active. In Wind and Truth, the Iriali begin their 5th journey and leave Rashar through a perpendicularity opened by Kusikesh, the ancient spren of Kasitor. Their stated purpose is still the collection of experience for the One. The first authorial hint predates Virtuosity's reveal. In 2017, Brandon was asked whether Iriali religion preserved knowledge of the Shattering. He said that it contained echoes of that event, then added more. He said that it contains more recent events that they don't even quite remember, and that in fact this influence was stronger. Virtuosity's self-splintering could be one of those later events, although the answer never explicitly names her. A more direct hint arrived in May 2026. A questioner linked the missing yellow, Virtuosity splintering, and the Iriali return to the One. Brandon gave the combined theory a slight yes, and said the questioner had noticed an interesting thread that he put there intentionally. Brandon has said that the rest of Virtuosity's story will appear in a future book. Until then, Yumi gives us the clearest picture of what her power does when nobody controls it. Her splinters seek out art, develop tastes, and choose how they will respond. But whether any conscious part of the Virtuosity remains is still unanswered. To close the video out, what stays with me about Virtuosity is how relevant this story feels now. The father machine can reproduce the motions of art, scale them beyond any human artist, and turn the result into an efficient system. It still has no reason to care about what it makes. Yumi's mastery matters because she chose how to use it. Painter rediscovers his artistic identity when he stops treating painting as an obligation and creates something because it really mattered to him. That distinction has become harder to ignore in the age of generative AI. New tools can make creation faster and remove much of the labour, but they can't capture the soul of the art. Art depends on passion, agency, and the experience of making something that changes the person creating it. After 17 centuries of being valued only for what she could provide, she chooses a life that belongs to her. Painter creates because he loves the work and the person he is painting. The tools will keep changing, but the reason we make things must remain ours. Keep learning, keep creating, and whatever happens next, never lose the fun. Feel free to ask your questions in the comments, because if I have the questions, maybe you do too. I'll see you in the next one.